I don't have much to tell in the intro. But in short, if you watch the full video, you will encounter a child of 90's seemingly creepy encounter with a figureless shadow. A 14-year-old with a 26-year-old wife whose father himself married a 14-year-old, and they worship an unknown religion. Also, you will see a nearby creepy trafficking story of a cute blonde. And make sure that you don't get too scared. In the 90's, I was in my younger years. I remember this day specifically for two reasons. Number one, I did finally saved enough pocket money to go get hungry hippos, and two, what I'm about to tell you. So it was a warm and sunny day sometime in the late 90's. I did finally saved enough money to get hungry hippos. My mom was talking me to get it soon. Said she just had to do some ironing. So I follow her upstairs and I'm sat on her bed, waffling nonsense as most kids do, when the house phone rings downstairs. So she puts the iron down and goes downstairs. I'm sitting there yammering away to myself when I look to the left, and there was a black shadow-like figure, quite tall with red eyes, looking at me through the bedroom window. I absolutely shit a brick. Got goosebumps typing this out, so I jumped under me mother's quilt on her bed and waited for her to come back upstairs, absolutely sweating my back out. She came up and it was like nothing had happened. I'm still confused about this to this day, and I've just turned 30. It was so clear though. I could clearly see it just staring at me. I will say as well, the house we was in originally was incredibly haunted. I've got many a story from being a child, but this is one of the ones that lingers. Anyone else ever seen anything similar, or was I just a mental child? So, folks, do you like what you are hearing? Then please do like, share and subscribe to my channel, and moreover, if you all want to hear the stories in my own voice and not some emotionless robotic voice, then also do comment down below, lol. If you all want to share your stories or any real-life creepy incident, then please feel free to share it by sending to the email mentioned in the description below. Okay folks, so this happened when I was 14. I'm 29 as of the time of writing this. I remember this story from time to time, meaning like once or twice every few years. It still gets me in a weird mood for some reason. Anyways, I was walking with one of my friends in the city the other day. I tried holding her hand, but then she thought I just bumped into her and apologized, so I was able to recover smoothly. Then I saw a group of kids skateboard past us, and lo and behold, that was the thing that sparked this memory, so I figured I'd write it down. So I'm not going to use this kid's real name, so I'll just call him Vinny. I come from a town where the people you went to school with in kindergarten were the same kids you graduated with. Vinny moved to our school about halfway through the year. When new kids came to our school, everybody flocked to them. At 14 I was kind of a dork, but also kind of a douche, which made me surprisingly likable to most people. Vinny would always sit by himself during lunch. Something I found amusing about him was that he would get infuriated if people asked him if he skated. I took that as a challenge to try and piss him off, and it worked. The first time he and I had a class together, I remember the teacher asking him if he had his books yet. He responded with, "My wife never confirmed my school schedule with the front office." I remember everybody thought that was funny. You're 14 years old, and you have a wife. He was clearly trying to get one over on the teacher. My friends and I were skating after school, and we saw Vinny. I remember talking to my friends about what he said, and we all became oddly infatuated with this kid. It took some doing, but after about a week of letting him hang out with us, he became one of the boys. One of my buddies asked if we could go sleep at his house on Friday night, under the guise that we took turns of staying at each other's houses to skate, play video games, and smoke the green stuff. He looked perturbed. which is something I wish mattered to me back then. But the next day at school, he did say it was okay after asking his parents. My buddies and I rode our bikes to where he lived, with clothes for the night, and our skateboards strapped to our bags. We met his family, who at face value seemed completely fine. Then things got a little weird. First, his dad had a huge weapons collection. At the time I thought it was awesome. He even took us out into a field by a canal to shoot some of his assault rifles. I know. Is that this wasn't cool of him without parents' consent. Next, we met Vinny's wife. Yeah. The girl was real. She was also 26. While we lived in the southern US, even this was taboo. They would hold hands and stuff. At the time, we thought this was dope. It was like dating a senior when you're a freshman. Only he was in high school, and she paid taxes. Things kind of got to a new level of weird when Vinny's dad had his arm around Vinny's mom, and his other arm around a girl that couldn't have been terribly older than we were at the time. Apparently that was also his wife. We then spent about 2 hours praying with the family in the living room. I was raised Catholic, but couldn't determine which religion they were practicing. Once we finished with that, we went outside to start skateboarding. After a few minutes, his dad came outside and ordered us into the house. Vinny's mother then had us stand in line outside of the bathroom to take a bath. It still skeeves me out, but I remember we weren't allowed to drain the water from the tub. I was the last one to bathe. Also, all of the mirrors in the house were covered with sheets. I don't know the significance of this. It makes more sense to me to not have mirrors at that point. We were told to go to bed, even though the sun wasn't even down yet. Vinny went to bed with his wife. The three of us that remained just lay there in one single queen-sized bed and talked about how much fun we weren't having. The final straw for the night was having to hear Vinny's parents, and maybe the other woman, doing the dirty in the next room. It was almost 11 p.m. when we decided to just get on our bikes and leave. It was dark and we had to ride through some bad neighborhoods, but we made it safe to my buddy's house. Vinny's mother would also later call our parents and leave some cryptic messages, which implied trouble. Vinny was pulled from school about a week later, and we never saw him again. I don't know what that family was into. Maybe it wasn't creepy at all, and I just didn't understand. All I know is that we felt uncomfortable. I have no issues with religion, but if this was part of their practice, I think it's a little weird. Out of curiosity, I went to find Vinny on Facebook. All I can confirm is that he, his mother, father, and one of his sisters had died. There were no public records of what happened to them, or if they even died at the same time. Probably not the creepiest story out there, but one I still come back to. It's worth the tell, and it's an interesting memory. If you all want to share your stories or any real-life creepy incident, then please feel free to share it by sending to the email mentioned in the description below, and also do comment if you all want to hear the stories in my own voice and not some robotic one. So moving to the final story that I found on the internet. I want to tell this story to warn others. I, 18-year-old female, live in Maryland, USA. I work at a very popular burger restaurant. I work at the payment window, which is where I stand all night. I'm very friendly. I know sometimes a smile and a compliment can make someone's day a little better. Just this same night, before the creeper came, I had a customer tell me I was so fucking happy, and she loved me for it. That gave me the courage and energy to survive this next interaction. I'm used to the awkward comments and stares from old men. I'm sure it's my friendliness that attracts them. Our uniforms are not revealing. They think I'm naive. Maybe I am, a lot more than I thought. I'm fully aware of the dangers of trafficking. This particular old man came through just before 6. He pretended to not hear his order, then laughed, like it was a joke between two friends. This is not uncommon, it's an old man thing. No red flags yet. I tell him his total and he hands me all but the change. When he does this, he waves the money around, making me chase it. I was able to snatch the cash, but again, it was just an old man thing. Not concerned yet. He stared at the company name on my shirt and asked if that was my name. I don't wear a name tag for this reason. I joked that I was going to change my name permanently to that. He perked up. At this point I should state that he was white, mid-60s to 70s, driving a small, white SUV with a kayak on top. He had some scruff on his face and was holding a phone to his ear this entire time. When I finally began to engage with him, he moved the phone to be facing me. Looking back, I believe he was recording me. At no point did he speak into the phone or acknowledge it in any way. He probed with more pressing questions. Here's the thing, I have the same last name as someone from US history. Most old people like talking about that stuff, so I told him my last name. He didn't reflect or laugh, he just accepted and continued asking questions. That's when I started to get this sinking feeling. He still owed me change, I told him. He grabbed another $1 and handed it to me, but he wouldn't let go. He wanted to know my first name, and I dodged answering because I was getting creeped out. He wouldn't let go of the money and was practically drooling for more data about me. I gave him a name I don't use and he smiled, finally letting go. I got his change and told him to have a nice day. I then immediately left the window and told one of my coworkers about the weird experience. He returned just 2 hours later. I didn't recognize his car on the cameras until he got to my window. I hadn't thought too much about our interaction and was busy texting my dad about whether or not a chicken sandwich was a burger. My stomach dropped when I saw his face. I have many regulars, all of whom I'd have been happy to see. I hope he doesn't become one, I'll call the police. He smiled and said, "Hey, the one with the last name." I half smiled back and wished for the days when we all wore masks. I tell him his total and he makes me chase the money again. For the entire time, he had his phone against his ear, facing me. He starts asking even more intimate questions about me. I lie or dodge them best I can, giving him 0 correct answers, wanting our interaction to be as short as possible. Some of the questions he asked me: how often do you work? What time do you leave? How old are you? For that one I knew he wouldn't leave without a number, and I had a nasty feeling the younger wouldn't be the better. So I said, probably 20s. He joked about me being legal. I made a face and tried to get his change even faster. He asked if I had a boyfriend. I was getting more and more nervous, so my answers started getting more sarcastic. I told him boys were trouble. He specifically talked about himself and said he'd treat me right. I handed him his receipt and told him to have a great night. He threw his hands in the air and was saying, "Don't be like that, I'll treat you right." I shut my window and said bye. He made a bit more of a fuss, but eventually drove forward. From his question about when I got off work, I believed he was watching the restaurant. I was shaking by this time and called my mom. She immediately drove up. I talked to my manager and I was a little unsure of the car's color, so he checked the camera for me. Shout out to my manager. He's the best. I continued at my window, watching for the old guy, but I didn't see him again. I left an hour early and gave my manager specific instructions to not place a girl at my window. He agreed. These interactions are unfortunately what cause formerly happy and cheerful service workers to become sour and quiet. I think I'll be taking a couple days off. I had already had another job lined up, and I'm excited to start it. Thank you for reading. At the end of this story, this girl even attached this as follows. I did not mean to make light of trafficking victims with my story. I did feel trapped by this guy and felt real fear he would be waiting for me, no matter when he thought I got off shift. I do not have a car and take myself home on a bike after dark. I think I would be very easy to follow/trap. I did not tell him how I get home.